So let's get into the details of what really happened here. I'm going to share as much as I can, just in hopes of shedding some light, answering some questions as to how this really started, what you can do to protect yourself if you're in this situation. We just going to get into it. As many of you know, it started off as a regular Airbnb reservation. I had this home on Airbnb as a short-term rental for years. So I had it through COVID, so I had people stay in this property for months and months, several months at a time. Dignitaries, political people, traveling nurses, people that are displaced, needing somewhere to stay temporarily. So, someone booking the Airbnb for 32 nights and saying that they have a fire was not a red flag to me at the time. I normally didn't host local guests, but there's always exceptions to the rule because I noticed in the comments, people saying like Airbnbs are tearing up housing and making housing unavailable for people. But the honest truth is that Airbnb, the way I was doing it, and we want to call it the short-term rental because Airbnb is just a platform, so they really don't have anything to do with it. The short-term rental is actually a good thing. If you are displaced or you have to stay somewhere for an extended period of time, you'd rather stay in a home, especially if you have a family and you have, maybe pets or a large amount of people. Staying in a hotel, even an extended stay for months and months on end, it can be a lot. So, offering that as an alternative to someone and giving them somewhere to stay, I don't see it as a bad thing, but that's a whole nother conversation. But there was no red flag in the situation, especially when someone says that they were displaced from a fire, because I have friends and family who have gone through that and it has taken a toll on them. And even the insurance companies sometimes have reached out to me to be able to see if I have openings for such a thing. So it wasn't really a red flag. Again, looking back, I'm going to do this. What would I have done differently? I probably would have looked up the person, seen if they had any outstanding court records or things like that. But even then, Airbnb does a general background check. I think it's a criminal background check, if I'm not mistaken. I know they don't get into like your credit or anything like that because it's kind of like if you pay, you stay, as long as you're not a criminal or have a certain level of criminal history. That's pretty much what they're looking for. It's not a credit-based system or something that you would be looking to see. Do you have a 750 credit score to rent an Airbnb? I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that, as I said, I had plenty of people stay. I don't know what their history was, what their credit was, but it's always one bad apple that will spoil the bunch, and it's always somebody out there that has bad intentions. But like I said, looking back on it, there were no red flags that this would be anything more than a person who needed somewhere to stay with her child and a dog. It would be a couple of months, maybe tops. I said it was 32 nights in the beginning. But, there was nothing to indicate that this is something that I need to be running. But as we see, I was wrong. So what happened next is that she asked to extend the reservation because her place wasn't ready. Now, mind you, I'm still thinking she came off of a fire. I had no idea about the evictions or any of that stuff at this point. I'm just thinking it's a lady, her child, her dog. They came from a fire and I'm helping her. That's literally what I think. She said, the place isn't ready. I still would like to extend the reservation probably for another few weeks or a month. So I'm thinking, again, I don't know how severe the fire was. I don't know anything. I just think I'm helping this lady to have a safe, comfortable place for her and her child and her dog during her awful situation. Because at that point, I was really thinking about how I could help her. Because I know if I was in a fire and I lost, stuff, I would want somebody to be there for me. She never asked for anything. This was just on my heart to do it. So I said, that's fine. Do you want to extend on the app? She said that she had to make the payments on her Amex card because she needed some type of reimbursement for her insurance company. I guess her rental insurance probably was giving her some type of funds for relocation or something, I'm assuming. She said she needed to make the Amex payment on the Amex card. I didn't think nothing of that either at the time because I know people who use their credit cards to make payments to get points and stuff like that. So, for me at that time, there wasn't a really big red flag. She had a situation and I was going to try to help her by providing her somewhere to stay temporarily until the situation resolved itself. She was able to get back into her place. So we moved forward. I tell her it'll be $100 a night. She said she needed the invoices Of course, I have the business because the property is a business. So I was able to provide her with invoices and receipts. So I extended the reservation for another month. The end of that month, she said she still needed to extend, but she extended, she paid. That was fine. Fast forward to June. So she made the payments seamlessly through June. June comes, I'm asking her about extending and about the payment. She goes unresponsive. So she doesn't respond for several days. I'm like, hello, status update, asking her what's going on. Finally, she sends back that she lost her phone, lost her wallet. So she just got back online, asked me to use email to send the invoice because she doesn't always have access to her phone. So at this point, I was like, well, how long do you expect to be until you get back into your place? At this point, this is in June, she tells me, no, I'm not going back to my place. I'm buying a house. So I would need the rental till at least September, October at the very latest. So I'm like, okay, I can do that. She pays late. Again, even with the wallet thing, the previous months, I hadn't really had any issues or dealings with her other than outside of small maintenance items or something like that. So it wasn't like a big red flag that she went non-responsive, but it was the beginning of a pattern. I extended the reservation for the next amount of time. She said she would say maybe a month or whatever, if it was 31 days in a month or maybe 32 days since she had paid. So we did it like that. Go to June. No, June. So we got through June, although the payment was late with the misplaced wallet and the phones that she didn't have. She did make the payment, not that much late, maybe 7 or some days, because the deal is with the Airbnb payments or the short-term rental payments, they need to be in advance. So I wouldn't care if she would have paid 1 week in advance, 2 weeks in advance, but you need to be paying $100 a night in advance. We shouldn't be playing catch up because then we're in another situation. So we need to be paying in advance. We've been doing. July comes. She sends me these screen recordings of her trying to make the payments with the Amex card. The Amex card is not going through. She sends me a confirmation number that the payment went through that I did not get. I called PayPal to see if the payment went through. They have no record of the payment. So I'm like, what's going on? They don't have this number that you gave me is not a reference number that PayPal has. Then she says her Amex card is on hold because the payment is pending. She needs to wait for it to drop off. I then say, well, it's not, whether you pay on an Amex card or however, you need to make the payment. You need to switch payment methods if this isn't working because I need the money. Like, you can't just pay whenever you want. We have to stay on the schedule. So she finally does make the payment again. So now we're paying catch up. In my mind at that time, she had said up until September or October, she would be out. So I'm like, hopefully we can just get through this and be done with it. August comes. No payment again. Responsive. Then when she finally does begin to respond, she's going to make the payment, but it doesn't come through. Then she has this emergency death in her family. She has to go and tend to out of the country because she's the only person in her family who can bury this aunt. And, you know, she's literally telling me, I'm at the funeral home now. Why she's not paying me anything. And I look on her social media pages, which was open at the time, and she's in Mexico, Puerto Rico at the Bad Bunny concert. I look back on the rest of her social media. She had been at the Breezy Bowl. She had been in Jamaica. She had been in Mexico. She's living this life. But every month with me, there's a situation where you don't have a phone. You lost your wallet. Your card won't go through. So this established the pattern that I was now able to see in August. So I said, listen, you're either going to make the payment or you're going to have to leave. You pay and stay, or if you don't, that's kind of where we were in August. And then it was the setup for what was to come. So by the end of September, she had made the partial payment online and then had to borrow the money from a family member. This is what she said, to pay in cash, which she did eventually. October 1st comes. Mind you, she's still running with the story about the aunt who she's recovering the funds from the funeral. October comes, no payment. I'm texting, where's the payment? Where's the payment? I'm going to make the payment. I'm going to the bank to get the payment. I'm like, why are you going to the bank to get the payment? You can make the payment online. Now, all of a sudden, her cards are compromised. She can't use any cards anymore. She can't use any PayPal, Cash App, Apple Pay. She can't do anything. She can only get cash. So she said she was going to get the cash. Then she sends a message and says her daughter's car got towed, so she wasn't able to get to the bank in time. Mind you, I'm thinking, okay, this is the last month, because back in June when we said September, latest is October. So I'm saying at this point, this is the last month. I'm telling her this. I had already given her a vacate notice in September, because every time she would be late and non-responsive, I would send her a vacate notice, and then she would try to catch the payment up. So this time I said, listen, we're not going to extend any further. In the original thing, the latest you said out of your mouth, and I had it in writing, was October. So to that end, we're going to end this situation. So if you want to make the payment for October, make it, or you can vacate the premises now, because I am not going to continue going on through this, because again, it was creating a lot of stress for me. It's way more back and forth that I even ever want to have to deal with on a regular basis. Someone with all these problems, I'm going to do it today, and then you don't do it, and you following up. So now at this point, she's supposedly going to get the money from the bank. It doesn't happen. She sent this message, said her daughter's car locked up and it got towed and the bank closed. Then she still says she's going to make the payment. But then miraculously, she stops communicating again. Then a few days later, 5 days later, she comes back into the text, because I sent another vacate notice. I used to send a vacate notice immediately along with the 30-day notice, because of the laws regarding 30-day notices, which we'll get into at the end of this. But I sent both notices, and I'm like, I'm not going through this. You cannot continue to stay in the property without paying. This is very simple. Pay and stay, or if you don't, you have to go. So next, she says, after she disappeared for about 4 or 5 days, she comes back onto the text and says her daughter stole the money. She gave her daughter the money. She was going out of town to decompress from her death in her family. That I found out was not correct. And that she gave her daughter the cash. She thought her daughter was going to deposit it in the bank, but the daughter stole the money. She goes into this big long story about how she beat up her daughter. The daughter called her brother, thought the brother was going to help her cover up the payment. I mean, the story was more than I could even take on. And at that point, I'm like, listen, I don't want to know. You're not paying. You have to go. That was just really that on that. Next thing I know, she has turned the power on in her name, in her daughter's name. So I turned the power off and turned it back into my name. She goes to court and files a restraining order on me, because for all of you all who said turn the power off, turn utilities off, it's actually illegal to do so. But I turned it off because she was trying to, I'm assuming at the time, try to get some bills into her name. So we go to court. I speak to my attorney. My attorney lets me know that to try to work something out with her, because he sees the pattern. She is trying to attempt to gain some type of tenancy here so that I can't ask her to leave. Mind you, we're on the Airbnb. We were doing short-term rental the night. She now is trying to convert that, because she's been there for some months, into a tenant situation. In that court filing in October, she requested that the court require me to allow her to participate in the emergency rental program that the District of Columbia has. As I instructed my attorney, I'm not participating in any rental program because I'm not her landlord. I don't wish to be her landlord. I made it very clear that at the end of our short-term rental agreement would end because of the instability, the dishonesty, all of the games that were being played. At that point, I didn't want anything to do with it. You couldn't have paid me $100,000 for her to stay in the property with all of the amount of stress and going back and forth and trying to get payments and all of the confusion that was going on. I don't operate like that. I didn't want that in my life. So we go to court. My lawyer advises me to try to come up with an agreement with her, because she's trying to flip this thing into a landlord situation. And if DC's tenant laws that are apparently, DC has the worst landlord, they're most tenant friendly, which means they're not landlord friendly in the country. So if she's able to flip this into that, this can drag on for years, and and I won't have any recourse. So we entered into an agreement where she admitted that she was not a tenant. She acknowledged that she was an Airbnb guest, a short-term rental. She agreed to leave with I was to give her $2,500 to be able to relocate, offer to waive 45 nights, which is $100 a night. So that's $4,500 to waive those fees. So waive $4,500, give her $2,500. She admits she's not a tenant. She has no rights. And she acknowledges that she will withdraw all lawsuits, pending, current, or future. And I thought, okay, I'm very relieved. Even though I'm taking a loss here, it's a business. Sometimes in business, you lose and sometimes you win. So I was willing to take the loss just to get rid of her, get rid of this situation. Okay, so we're entered into the agreement. The agreement is in the court record from the hearing that we had in October. So I'm thinking everything's straight. We just need to wait the time out. So the time goes on. About a week before the 15th of November, which is the move out date, she says, you know, I may not be able to move on the 15th because I'm having trouble finding somewhere to go. So I just responded and said, unfortunately, we can do no more extending. We're going to adhere to the agreement. There's been no payment received, obviously. And at that point, I didn't want a payment from her anyway. I just wanted her to be out. And so she says, I'm trying to get into a program and that may be on the 20th of November and all of this. And I said, listen, you have already received $4,500 worth of free stay. You are to receive $2,500 in physical money to be able to relocate. So if that's not enough, you know, I don't really know what to tell you. I'm all out of options for you. So to that note, I said I'm not able to go against the agreement. I'm adhering to the agreement. She didn't respond. On a couple of days before, so around the 13th, I sent her an email and a text message and said, what time are we to meet on Saturday, which was the 15th, so that I could give you your payment and ensure that the property is in the correct condition and that you are all moved out. It took her a long time to respond. Then she responds via email and says that unfortunately, the agreement that we entered into does not meet her permanent needs and provide her with a permanent solution. So she will not be vacating the premises, and that she is in fact a tenant in the District of Columbia. And despite the fact that she waived her tenant rights in that former agreement, she is not adhering to that at all. She is going to the DC ERAP program, Emergency Rental Assistance Program, and I need to do whatever I need to do via the courts to get her out. And the end of the email was, and you have an amazing weekend. And that is where this went completely left. Because as I spoke to her and told her, you're not going to stay in my property for free. That property has a $4,000 mortgage on it, plus utilities. I can't afford to pay your bills or pay somewhere for you to stay. I already at that point had taken just a $4,500 loss plus legal fees, because mind you, she had already filed that court filing previously, so I had to have an attorney represent me for that. And I already was, if you think about the numbers, I was charging her $100 a night. The mortgage on the property is $4,000. That's only $3,000 for every 30 days. So I'm already running a deficit. That's not her issue. I didn't bring it to her attention. That was a business decision that I made. But at that point, I wasn't able to take care of you or let you stay there for free. And I was astounded at the audaciousness of this particular email, because it just went, how do you go to court, make an agreement, and then just decide that it doesn't work for you and now it's on me? But that shows you the integrity of a person and how did they move in life. And again, at this point, I hadn't done any digging. I didn't look her up in case search because I'm thinking we have an agreement. You're out. I have a whole life that I live on a regular basis, you know, so my days were not consumed with her and whatever personal problems that she had. I thought, you know, we had a business situation, we resolved it, we take the hit, and we move on. But she decided that she was not going to adhere to the agreement via email. I waited for the 15th to come and go because she had until midnight on the 15th. The 16th, I get up, I take the agreement that I have that is listed in the court docket. I pull the court record and print that out. I print the move out agreement and I go to the police station, the 5th District Police Station. I tell them, listen, I have a situation with a trespasser, because at this point she signed away any tenant rights in that could have been implied by the DC regulations. She signed that away in court, and I have this document that's entered in the court record. If you look at the court docket, it's on the court docket, so it's not just a random paper that I could have even made up if I wanted to. And so I take it to the police station, and they go to the house with me. They tell me, we don't do evictions. I said, yeah, I understand you don't do evictions, but this is not an eviction because she's not a tenant. She is a short-term rental guest who has made no payment at this point for 46 nights. We have an agreement entered into the court, and I just need you to let her know she needs to leave. They go into the property, ask her to leave. She says no, and they tell me that there's nothing that they can do, despite me having this document that clearly states she's not a tenant. And DC police tell me that she is in fact a tenant and I need to go to tenant landlord court. And I'm saying, well, why would I need to go to tenant landlord court when I have a document that states that you're not a tenant that you signed in a court? So this is already starting off backwards. So I said, well, that's fine. Okay, she's not leaving, then I'm going to go in and stay with her. I heard a lot of you say, I'll go in and stay. I would have been in the house. I walk in the house. I tell her, this is not going to go down like this. You can't stay in the property for free. I sit on the couch. The police literally come into the house and threaten to lock me up if I don't leave the premises because she has rights. So now here we are. She's in the property, not made a payment. DC Police Department has determined that they're not going to assist me with this because now it's what they want to call a civil matter. I cannot gain access into the property if she doesn't choose to, according to MPD. But I do recognize and ask the law enforcement officials about my rights as a property owner, because at that point, I'm like, she can't have all the rights and I don't have any rights. So what rights do I have? I have the right to maintain my property. I have the right to all exterior of the property. I have the right to have my cameras and my security equipment functioning and operable. I have the right, the house is in DC, so it backs to an alley. She had her cars parked back there. I have the right to the alley. I don't have to provide her the alley access. So at that point, I started really figuring out how I'm going to assert my rights since she's asserting her rights. I also get my attorney to file an emergency order to try to get her out of the property the other way. My attorney then informs me that we're going to do it based on this contract, but this agreement, the move out agreement, but there's a strong likelihood again, because again, DC is extremely tenant friendly, that they may not honor this contract and they may very well make her a tenant, which is what she's banking on and what she's trying to do. This is when I began to look into her and come to find out that upon her reservation with me, she was evicted 5 days before her reservation with me from a place that she moved into and paid 1 month's rent and lived for 13 months for free. She used that ERAP program to try to delay eviction. Then when she actually was evicted in December, a fire started only in her unit in that building. Then I learned that prior to that eviction and situation, she stayed somewhere else for another 8 months without paying and ended up owing them $36,000. She owed them $36,000. She owed the place that she came to me right before. She owed them almost $50,000. I learned that she had a name change at some point, and her previous name, she also had multiple lawsuits. She had been affiliated with other eviction proceedings and just a whole host of all this stuff. So now I am in complete panic mode because now I see I'm dealing with somebody that is a professional. This is what they have done. this is what they do. So now I really have to sit and try to make some type of plan on how I'm not going to let this happen to me. Because the thing about it is this: I worked hard my whole life. Nobody has given me anything. And I tell you all, when you all were making those comments about beating up somebody, taking the law into your own hands, I would be lying to you if I didn't tell you that that's how I felt. You know, I've made a good life for myself over the last 20, 30 years. But before that, I was a fighter. I had to fight my whole life to try to get something, do something. Nobody gave me anything or handed anything to me. I never stole nothing from nobody. And anybody on these comments who knows me personally knows that I have a big heart and will help. And the sad part about it, about her situation, is what she doesn't know is I intended on giving her all the furniture out of the property, because again, I'm under the impression that you came from a fire. I intended on giving her a little bit of extra money so that she and her child could have a fresh start, because that's where my heart lies. I have a strong sense about right and wrong and about homelessness. I've been homeless. My father was homeless when I was coming up. So I'm not insensitive to all of the struggles that we go through, but that never gave me the right or authority to take from anybody or to manipulate a situation or operate in wrongdoing just to try to get gain for myself. I truly believe she may have a hardship, but it may be self-imposed based on all of the things that you've done to get yourself there. And you should never take advantage of another person. I'm not suggesting that anybody should take advantage of an apartment complex. But the reality is apartment complexes are owned by millionaire, billionaire type of corporations. They have lawyers on deck. They can afford for somebody to live in a place for 13 months for free, and it's not going to cripple their building and their portfolio of real estate. But a person, an individual person who tried to be good to you and extend grace and kindness to you, for you to take that kindness for weakness and then try to take advantage of a situation, I wasn't going to have it. I was going to stand for everything that I can do within my rights. And that's where the fight really began, because the police were not helping. The original court date that I got when I first filed was February the 20th, which would have been November, December, January, February. 4 months from the original date of the infraction of where she breached the order. And actually then 5 months from payment for a $4,000 a month mortgage. This is crippling to people. And it should never, ever, no one should ever be able to do that. And the fact that someone would try to do that to somebody that's their fellow brethren who it was kind to them, it is deplorable. So now is when I'm trying to figure out how to enforce my rights and hoping that I can get some kind of relief. I informed the police that I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to sit here and allow this lady to just take over my house and I'm just going to sit back. She had an electric car that she was going to be plugging up to my utilities while I'm paying the bill. Mind you, now I have attorney's fees because I had to pay the lawyer for the first hearing. Now I have this ongoing legal battle. On the 14th, she had already filed some type of paperwork. I think she had to file at least 5 to 10 cases or different paperworks and contempt orders and all of this. So now I'm in a situation where I have legal fees on top of the home expenses, on top of the utilities and everything. So I'm like, no, I'm not going to sit here and allow this to go on. And this is no offense to any law enforcement or any court or anything. I respect law enforcement and I respect the court. But in this scenario, they're of no help because the police are basically saying it's nothing that they can do. The court is backlogged and don't find it to be of a priority. Because remember, I told you the first court date was February the 20th. So I'm filing what I need to file, and you know, I'm just not the type of person that's going to sit there and let this go on. So I begin to assert my own rights. I start contacting officials, council members, the news, making social media posts to bring awareness for my fellow friends. I'm a realtor in the state of Maryland, so I have a lot of people that are in that profession to try to get some type of help, assistance, support. She had a car parked in the back of my driveway that had expired and dead tags. I was down there with the police. I said, I want the car towed. They tell me, oh, we can't tow the car because they have a tenant right. And I said, well, the way I understand my rights, I don't have to allow access to the backyard for parking. So I'm going to exercise my rights. They were of no help to me. I had to get with DPW, which is the Department of Public Works, issue a ticket, sit down there for 4 hours. Mind you, when I was on the phone with DPW telling them that I wanted to have the car towed because it had dead tags and I didn't want it on my property, they said, well, you can flag down a police officer and they can issue the ticket. Once you issue the ticket, we will tow the car. The MPD told me they can't do anything for me. Take a note of that. So I sit down there for 4 hours, wait for the parking people to show up, ticket, and tow the car. I get the car towed. So I'm like, okay, small victory for me. Because again, I'm not going to sit back and allow you to just take my house and I'm just not going to do anything. It's just not going to happen. And so the car is towed. I have a contractor's van that I'm parking on the property because, mind you, I was going to sell this house once she left. So I theoretically had contractors and stuff scheduled to come that Monday because she was supposed to be gone because I was going to sell the property and just move on because this situation had just taken such a toll on me. And now that I was very aware of what could have happened with the tenant laws, I was like, I don't want any parts of this. So I just want to be out of this property. So I put the van in the back of the property. So now she can't get her car to charge into the charging port because the van is in the way. So I did that first thing. I go home. I look on the cameras. She is calling the police and having the police, telling the police it's her house and that she wants to tow my car that's legally parked because it's my property. I happen to catch it and I call the sergeant and tell them what's going on. They're able to get in touch with the officer who stops the situation. But they were literally about to tow my car. So then it begins to escalate. So now she starts tampering with the cameras because she knows that I'm watching because I was able to circumvent her from doing that. So she starts tampering with the cameras. So now I'm going down to the property because you're not supposed to be tampering with the cameras. So I go with the police. If I show up at the property, she would call the police. So the police were there like almost every day. So I fix the cameras. She takes them down. She puts covers over the cameras. This is just kind of getting worse and worse. So every time she's calling the police, she's calling and they're assuming that she's the homeowner. So that's when I thought about the signs. The sign that's installed up here is not the first sign. The first sign was just a banner type of sign. It was 2 banners, and I had my contractor put them on each side of the 2 windows that said the same thing: unauthorized occupancy, no lease, no tenancy, legal action in progress. Because I wanted to notify anyone that came there that this is my property, this is not her property, and that they need to take a little bit more time when they are, making decisions about what's going on there, to do a little bit more research as to what's going on. Because again, she was not a tenant. The police had a presumption that she was a tenant because it was like, I don't want to get into it. But I had paperwork to substantiate this that nobody wanted to listen to or acknowledge. So I'm operating, which in the true legal fashion, that she's not a tenant. So I had the car towed. I put my vehicle there. She proceeds to call the police and tell them that I'm there, threatening her when I was not even anywhere near the property. I literally was at home, and MPD called me on my phone and said, hello, why are you at the property trying to evict the tenant? And I'm like, I'm in Maryland. I'm not at the property. Are you at the property? Is what I said to the police officer. I said, because if you were at the property, you would know I wasn't there. And she said, well, the lady said you were here, and like accosted me on the phone. So at this point, I am livid. So now I'm in a battle with the MPD too. So I go to the 5th district, make a complaint against the officer because you're calling me and literally threatening me. Then when I got her car towed, she called back to the police and told the police that I stole her car. So MPD called me again on the phone, which they seem to be able to call me for everything except when they need to call me, and tell me that they have a police report that I stole her car. I said, well, I have a ticket number because when they ticketed the car, I took a picture of the ticket so that I would have it for my records. And I also had the tow receipt from the police people. I didn't tow her car. I didn't touch her car. It was done with the police and with the police tow truck. So we're going through that. But I'm like, I'm not quitting. I put the banners up and I fixed the cameras and I put my van back there, and I was like, we're going to do this every day because you don't belong in my property. I'm not going to give you my property. You are going to have to leave my property. I'm not going to do this. You will not sit in my property until February. I can't afford to pay for an adult to live, and you don't have any tenant rights because I never gave you a lease. I never entered into any contract with you. And, you know, the reality is, even if I did, which I didn't, when you breach a contract, meaning not failure to pay rent, then there should be some consequences to that. You shouldn't have to be allowed to sit anywhere for 13 months without a payment. Doesn't even make sense. But she's used to doing this at this point, as we see from the court records and the court documents. So this is the way that she's going to, at this point, handle the situation. So now she's fighting as if she has rights and that I don't. And I was just like, it's not going to go down like that. So I put the banners up. I come back. She ripped them down. So I had my contractors build a sign, a physical sign. The reason why she didn't want the sign is because you wanted to live a life that was untrue. You don't want everyone to know that you're actually sitting in someone's house, not paying, that you have breached agreements. You went to the court and did not abide by what you entered into willingly, and you don't want to live in that truth. You want to pretend like this is your house that you're paying for and everything is fine. And it wasn't going to happen like that. Not with me. So I go to the property with my contractor and the new big, huge sign that is actually a sign with a frame and a board and can't be ripped down once it's put up there. And my contractor proceeds to pull out his ladders and everything to put the signs up. Mind you, at this point, I never try to access the property because every time I was told I can't get in the property and I would be arrested. So at this point, I don't even try to get in the property. If I'm at the property, I'm fixing the cameras because she continuously tampered with the cameras like the whole time. Or I'm putting the signs up. I was there with a contractor at one time that she wouldn't allow us access. But at that point, I wasn't in the property and I really wasn't trying to engage with her one-on-one. But again, I was going to enforce any right that I had and legally do so. So my contractor comes with the ladder. We are attempting to put the ladder up on the house. She comes out of the house, gets on the phone with the police, and literally tries to push the ladder while I'm on the ladder because she doesn't want the signs installed. So she's calling the police. I'm out there. Literally at this point, it was getting bad. You know, there were things being said that were bad. You try to push me off a ladder. So I am really trying to withhold myself at this point because you have taken it to a whole nother level, you know, and I'm standing on, this is my house. I have the right to put a sign up on my house. If you walk through that neighborhood there where the house is, people have all kind of signs. Black Lives Matter, people who love Trump, just different things. You are able to put a sign. There's no HOA there. There's no reason that I can't put a sign on my house. And this was within my right to do so. But she came outside. She sat on the phone with the police. She literally lied in front of us to the police and told the police that someone harmed her arm. So the police are speeding to the property because now she has said that someone did something to her when she was the aggressor in the situation, and has the ambulance, the fire truck out there. She's stepping in the ladder and trying to say that she is not going to move because she's not going to allow these signs to be installed on the house. So police finally get there, and this particular day, they were somewhat helpful, and they told her, you cannot do this. You cannot touch the signs, because I told them I put the signs up. She took the signs down. I had video footage to prove it, but of course, they were not going to do anything about it. So my contractor was able to finally install the sign. The police had to literally threaten her not to touch the sign because she said she was going to damage the sign. And the police told her, if you touch the sign, you're going to jail. This is their property. You cannot tamper with items that are outside the property. The same way I can't come in the property, you can't come out the property and just tamper with things. And I feel like this, when you're in a situation like this, you need to defend yourself and your rights. Just rights can't work for one party. They have to work for both ways. So if you're in a situation, research your rights and exercise every right that you have in the situation. Because if you don't, no one's going to advocate for you. You know, you'll be caught up in something forever. And there are ways, things that you can do. Again, I contacted the news, contacted the mayor's office, contacted the city council members. I went to my property and enforced every right that I could legally do to let this person know I'm not going to stand back while you take my property and you sit in peace and a peace and quiet as if you are paying something, you are entitled to something. All the time that she was there, when she did make payments, there were no issues. I don't bother anybody. I fulfill my end of the responsibility, but I expect the same thing from somebody else. And so, you know, that's how it started getting really, really bad. And so the next thing I know, she has the sheet hanging out of the sign. So then she put the sheet up because now you want to cover up the sign again, because again, you don't want anybody to know who you really are. You don't want anybody to know the truth about it. And I guess at some point she dug her heels in and just decided this is the route that she was going to take. And that's where she was going to, you know, she was going to just stand on that. So next thing I know, the news is involved. Now, when the news gets involved, things get a little bit they become a little bit more important. So the police are a little bit more thoughtful when they come out. At one time, they wouldn't even give me report numbers. They were like, this is a civil matter. We're not giving you a report number. I'm like, well, I need a report number because this is an ongoing case. So I need to document everything that's going on here. The fraudulent calls, the false reports, the accusations of things happening, the tampering with the camera. The police literally told her, don't tamper with the camera. And she went out the back door and did it. And they hadn't left the front yard. And they went back to her and said, don't tamper with the cameras. But the thing is that I noticed when I was in the property, they threatened to lock me up. Throughout the whole process, they never threatened to lock her up. Never. So now the news is involved and we're getting some kind of traction as far as there seems to be some attention being drawn. I'm actually speaking to council members at this point. They're asking questions about what's going on. So I feel like I'm getting a little bit more presence. I get a expedited court date because when she tried to push me off the ladder, I went down to the court and had to file for a restraining order myself. At that point, they pushed the court date up because the situation is escalating and she had repeatedly filed things on me. At this point, I'm responding and filing things on her. So that's the only reason that we got a court date that was closer than February, because at first, you know, that was what we were going to get in an emergency situation. So fast forward a little bit, the news comes out, does the report. The neighbors now are all aware because they see the sign out there, they see the news, they've seen the police, so they're coming out talking to me, explaining their support for the situation. She keeps tampering with the camera, so I don't have much access to things. At one point, she just disengaged the whole security system, which the police told her not to do, but she did what she wanted to do anyway because there was never any consequence for her. And so the neighbors started watching the house for me and telling me everything that was going on so that I could figure it out. You all might have seen a news report where I went and cut the sheet down to expose the sign. Of course, she threw another sheet right back out the next day because she didn't want that situation and she didn't want to be exposed. Well, on Thanksgiving, the day before Thanksgiving, the neighbor contacted me and told me that he saw her leave the house with so many bags, like lots of bags, and the dog and the whole family. And he said to me, the neighbor, I think she's really gone. I think they left. So I didn't have access to the cameras, like I said, because she had shut the security system down. So I went with the police to see if this was true. Get there, call the police. The police clears the house. No one is in the house. The police tell me I can secure the property. I secure the property. I change the locks, board the house up. And there was something going on with the electrical panel at the time. It was like sparking. So my electrician came and shut the breaker off or did something with the breaker. So there's no power in the house at this point. The windows are boarded up. The doors are boarded up. The locks are secured. So I'm like, okay, yay, we got the house back. MPD told me at that time to notify her because she had stuff in the house. If y'all watch the eviction process, you see it was stuff in the house. To notify her that I had secured the property with MPD and she had 7 days to get her things with a police escort or a court order. And after that, the things will be considered abandoned. I did that, and I'm thinking, yes, I got my property back. But, okay. So the house is secured with the police. I sent a text message to her, giving her the 7 days to get the items. I'm like, okay. My lawyer instructed me to also contact the police station directly to verify that the house was secured with the police, and also to put a flag on the property because so that they would know that I have now taken possession over the property. So that anything goes on, you know, they'll have like notes on the file that she's out of the property and I now have taken possession of the property. I had put signs in my van in the back that said the same sign as the front. I took the sheet down, so the sign was very obvious at that point. So the sheet was gone, so you could see the sign clear as day, and the signs were in the back with the van. Police tell me we don't have to put any flag, or we don't do that. But since you've secured the property, if she tries to get in, now it's going to be breaking and entering, and then she'll be arrested. So I'm like, okay, I feel a little sense of security in that. I'm at dinner with a friend, and the neighbor calls and says that she's getting in the property. So I call the police, ride down there. Lo and behold, she's back in the house. But guess what? The police allowed her to get a locksmith and bust up my locks and break back into the property with the police assistance. So I am irate at this point because I'm like, what did she provide to you for her to get in the house? Because at that point, once she was outside of the house, the law, I possessed the house. So now it's the burden of proof should have been on her to prove that she has legal access to the house, which would have been a lease or a court order or something stating that she actually was a tenant and actually had rights, which she didn't. But the police didn't ask her for anything. She stated, I don't know if she said she was the homeowner or I live here and I can't get in. I guess no red flag went up to the police. Well, if you can't get in, how is this your house? Why can't you get in? Where are your keys? Where's your information? None of that. They stood there. They allowed her to break back into the house. At this point, the house is unsafe because, again, there's no lights. There's no heat. It's boarded up. So there's no fire exits. And there's a child in the property. I asked for the sergeant. The sergeant comes, tells me it's nothing that they can do. This is a civil matter. I'm like, it's not a civil matter. I secured my house with your officers, and you all just allowed her to break back in my face with your assistance. Like, I couldn't even believe it. So I called CPS because she was in there with a child. It's no heat, it's no lights. And like I told them, you all are complicit in this because how do you let someone in a house? Now, if there's a fire or if something happens, somebody freezes or whatever, then you let them in a house that they should not be in. So at this point, I'm just like, I'm in complete shock. I can't even believe it. I speak to the news reporter to give her the updates on what's going on. And she's in complete shock. I go file a complaint at MPD. You know, they're just looking at me like, well, I don't know what you want us to do. You shouldn't have allowed her in the house this whole time. Every time I need my rights enforced, I can't get anything. You can't do anything for me. You can't tow a car for me. You can't evict someone when I have a paper saying they're not a tenant already that's signed into a court. You can't do nothing for me. But you allowed her to break into this property with a child, and it's unsafe. So here we are. And once again, she went back down to the court and filed another emergency restraining order on me because now the property doesn't have heat and doesn't have lights. We get an emergency hearing. I'm thinking, okay, we're going to get the emergency hearing. They're going to see the document finally, because this is the first time I'm ever actually getting in front of a judge. They're going to go through the document, see where we are with this, and do something about it. Well, that's not what happened. I get to the house because now I have figured out that my van is gone. But I also had this hearing at a certain time. So I'm going to deal with two things. I'm going to deal with being on the hearing, which was virtual, and deal with the van being gone. Mysteriously, now the van is gone. Once she broke back into the property, my van was gone. So I go on the hearing. The judge doesn't want to know about any of the move out agreement. The judge doesn't want to hear about any of the things that are going on. Her trying to push me off the ladder. Her not allowing me in the house. Her tampering with the cameras. None of that. The only thing the judge orders me to do is turn the heat back on. And I said, respectfully, she broke into a property at this point. You're not an Airbnb guest anymore. You're not a perceived tenant. You are a trespasser, a criminal breaking and entering, and you want me to provide heat. That's the only relief that the court gave that day. She said, I'm going to divert this to the next judge, and you need to have the heat on in the property. Now, mind you, if I didn't turn the heat on, it's going to be a $15,000 fine for me. So here we sit. Again, no help. I'm trying to do everything that I can the right way, and this is what I get. So next, I'm call the police back because I need to figure out what happened to my van. I didn't know if it was stolen. I didn't know if it was towed. I didn't know anything. So when you call the police, you give them your tag number. I thought at first it was towed. So they said they didn't have a record of the van, the tag number, and they don't have a record of towing it. So I reported it as stolen. Mind you, the cameras are still not working because there's no power or anything to the house. So I go to the neighbor and ask the neighbor, do they have footage from the time frame? Because I knew it was there a day before because I was there. And they said they'll send me footage if they can find it. Well, they send me footage of my van being towed by the Metropolitan Police Department. But you reported it stolen because you have no record of my van in your system. So at this point, I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. If I didn't live this, I wouldn't even think that this could be possible. So I call back to 5th District and I say, you know, you all have my van reported stolen, but I have video footage that you towed my van. So I need to know why you towed my van, who authorized you to tow my van. Mind you, I have the signs in the van and the sign on the house. And I called the district to let them know that I possess the house, but none of that seems to matter. I see the officer shining the flashlight, reading the signs that say this belongs to the legal owner of the property. I can see her shining the light on the signs before the van is towed. So the operator who answered the phone was like, email her the footage. I send her the footage. She calls back and says, I don't know. Maybe you should drive around and look for your van because maybe we moved it for safekeeping. It was safe in the back parking area of the house. I was like, I'm not driving around looking for my van. You're going to have to figure out, somebody there is going to have to figure out where my van is. So she tells me she's going to call me back. And about 2 hours later, she calls me and tells me it's in a tow yard. She still has no record of the van being towed, no information about the van being towed. She really just called around to the tow yards that she knows that they use to see if they had a record of the van. So now my van's been towed by MPD, no records. She's back in the house from breaking in, and the judge has demanded that I turn the heat on and granted me no relief for any of the other things that are going on.